Hey y'all, welcome to Tea's Thoughts, where we nourish our souls through in-depth Bible study, encouragement through the Word, and learning spiritual disciplines. If you would like to be a part of the Tea's Thoughts community, hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell so that you can get all the content that I upload every week. Y'all, as you can see, I'm in my car again. We're going to study Ruth Chapter 1 in today's lesson, but I'm in my car because life is just lifing, and I didn't have time to record in my home office, so I wanted to get a video out, and I didn't want to be behind, so I'm on my lunch break and I am recording this Bible study, and it is going to be fabulous. So pray my strength in the Lord, okay, as we go through this Bible study. All right, join me as we start Ruth chapter 1. Ruth is our study for this month. And we're going to start on Ruth chapter 1. So grab your pen, get your Bible, get you some highlighters, get your favorite journal, and let's study Ruth chapter 1. All right, guys. Now, if you have not seen our foundation video for Ruth, I'll link that below, but watch the foundation video because it would give you some historical and cultural context for the book of Ruth. Okay? So, Ruth takes place during the time of the judges, right? During this time, Israel was in a very bad place. They were doing what was right to them and what seemed to be right in their own eyes, and not what was right according to God. They were worshiping idols. They were practicing pagan ideology. And in this particular story of Ruth, we find that Naomi and her husband Elimelech had left Bethlehem, right? They were leaving there because there was famine in the land. And so they left Bethlehem, and because of the famine, and they went to Moab because there was economic prosperity in Moab. So they were going there to, they thought it was right for them to leave their home and go to Moab. They were doing what seemed to be right to them. Okay, so we all have done that. You know, we may leave a job because it's not paying right, or, you know, we may leave a town because everything is so expensive and we just need to go find something that's more affordable. But did we acknowledge God in those decisions? Did Naomi and her husband pursue God and ask God about going to Moab? We don't know, but they were doing what was right to them. But here's the thing about Moab. Moab was a place that the children of Israel were not supposed to mingle with the Moabites, right? Because the Moabites were descendants of Lot and his daughter. That was that whole thing of Lot going back to when Lot, when God had abolished Sodom and Gomorrah, and they were left, and his daughters went out and in their own thought they were going to go and procreate the world again, and went in and had an ancestral affair with their father and produced sons, and out of that became Moab was produced from that. And so the Moabites were pagan people who were not worshiping God. And so Elimelech and Naomi left the house of bread and went to a pagan country. Okay? So sometimes we have to make sure that we consult God, because of the fact that, you know, we don't leave a place where God has us, where a place that God has ordained for us to be, and go to a place because it seems good, and go to that place, and that place is one that is not ordained by God. Okay, and so we have them going to this place and leaving home from the house of bread to a pagan place. All right, so now let's look at Ruth chapter 1. I gave you a little history, right? So we're going to go back to Ruth chapter 1, and we find, let's look at verses 1 through 3. And it says, during the time of the judges, there was a famine in the land. A man left Bethlehem in Judah with his wife and 2 sons to stay in the territory of Moab for a while. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi. The names of his 2 sons was Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They entered the fields of Moab and settled there. Verse 3. Naomi's husband Elimelech died, and she was left with her 2 sons. So we see that at some point in time that Naomi's husband died in Moab, right? And so we see that he has gone and that she is left with only her 2 sons. And somewhere in there, her 2 sons marry Moabite women. They just keep going deeper and deeper into what God had not told them to do, and what God had said, do not mingle, do not marry Moabite wives, right? And so we see that around, they marry Ruth and they marry Orpah. And 10 years later, they both die. Wow. Let's look at 4 and 5. And it says, her sons took Moabite women as their wives. One was named Orpah and the second was named Ruth. After they lived in Moab about 10 years, both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and Naomi was left without her 2 children and without her husband. Now, can you imagine leaving home, going to a place that you don't have family, you don't have any loved ones there, you don't have cousins and aunties and all that, and you go to this place and all your family that you have there dies, and you're left alone. And in that time, women, depended on their husband for survival. And if they did not have their husband, they depended on their male children to help and provide and to do all the things. And so we find Naomi with nothing. She has nobody now but her 2 daughter-in-laws. Have you ever been in a situation where you have nothing and you have no one to depend on? Come on. We have all been in situations. Some of us have. It's like the buck stops with me. I have nothing else to depend on. So if God don't make a way, then I don't know how we're going to do this thing. And so we're looking at Naomi in a place that she should not have been in, but found herself there with nobody to help her. Y'all, think on that. Let's go to verse 6 and 7. So this is what Naomi does. Naomi makes a decision. And in that decision, we see Ruth's loyalty to Naomi and to God. Okay? Now remember what I said about Moab. Pagan. Came from an ancestral relationship. They were pagan people. They did not worship God, did not know God. But watch Ruth and Naomi's relationship. Okay? Let's go to 6. So she and her daughters-in-law set out to return from the territory of Moab, because she had heard in Moab that the Lord had paid attention to his people's needs by providing them food. She left the place where she had been living, accompanied by her 2 daughters-in-laws, and traveled along the road leading back to the land of Judah. Now, she made a decision to go home. Why? Because she heard that God had heard his people and he had listened to his people, and he was providing for them in the house of bread, in the place of bread, in Bethlehem, the place where God has had placed his people, and she said, I heard that God had listened to the people's cry, and now he is providing. So I am going to go home. She didn't have anything to keep her in Moab. So she's made a decision. I'm going home. How many times have we had to make a decision that what is before me is not working for me, and I need to go back home to what is going to work for me, where God is providing and God is moving. We made a wrong decision. We walked through that door that God didn't open, but then he said, daughter, son, you can always come back home. Just like that prodigal son who took all his stuff, took all his inheritance, and went off, swindled it all, but then he came back and his father accepted him with a royal dinner and placed royal garments on him and said, son, welcome home. And God is just like that. But we have to make a decision to go home. Come on. Let's look at, so then Naomi, she makes that decision. She has her daughter-in-laws with her. And so then Naomi began to think about that thing. And she said, Ruth and Orpah, stay home. Why would she say that to them? Let's look at it. Okay, we go into verses 8 through 15. So Naomi said to them, each of you go back to your mother's homes. May the Lord show kindness to you as you have shown to the dead and to me. May the Lord grant each of you rest in the house of a new husband. She kissed them and they wept loudly. They said to her, we insist on returning with you to your people. And look what Naomi said. She said to them, but Naomi replied, return home, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Am I able to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. Go on, for I am too old to have another husband. She said, even if I thought there was still hope for me to have a husband tonight and bear sons, would you be willing to wait for them to grow up? Would you restrain yourselves from remarrying? No, my daughters, my life is much too bitter for you to share, because the Lord's hand has turned against me. Again they wept loudly, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Naomi said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Follow your sister-in-law. Now this right here, we see Naomi being a place of trying to be a woman of reason. She loved her daughter-in-law. She called them daughter. She knew that they were going to leave home and did not have a husband to take care of them. She didn't even know how she was going to take care of herself. And so she told them, she said, stay home. Go to your family. But not only that, she pronounced a blessing to people that did not know God. But somewhere down the line, they had to see God in Naomi. Because one, Orpah really didn't want to leave, but she reasoned among herself and said, no, she's too old to have a husband. What am I going to do? But so she went home. No problem. She stayed home. But Ruth clung to her. Ruth held on to Naomi, but the God that was in Naomi. She said that, now let's look at Ruth's declaration to Naomi and to God. Y'all, I'm getting happy. Because somebody ought to see God in you, that they want to cling to you, that they want to hold on to you, because they know, yes, I don't know where I'm going. I'm leaving home. Yes, I don't know how we're going to take care of ourselves, but God will provide. I've seen God move through this woman. I've seen God move through this man of God. And so somewhere I know, I may not know him for myself, but I know him in this person who I follow. So I am going to cling to them. Come on. Because there's something good that's got to come out of this thing. So Ruth said no. Look what Ruth said in 16. She said, but Ruth replied, don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go, and where you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me and do so severely if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi saw that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her. Y'all, we've got to learn how to make a declaration: for God I live, and for God I die. Naomi had took care of her. Naomi had to be a good resource and a good mother-in-law to her. And she said, Lord, Ruth, Naomi, don't tell me to leave you, because I can't afford to leave you. Come on, I've got to stay with you. Nothing can separate me and you but death. My life is hung to you. My life is dependent on going where you go. Come on. Sometimes we ought to be such a godly influence to someone that they gotta be and see that God is with you, and that they want what you got, and that's God. Come on. Because if they don't hang on to you, they're not going to be able to get the blessing that is on the other side of this situation. So they need your wisdom. That's why you got to stay close to God. That's why you got to stay in the wisdom of God and hear him, and to be able to allow certain people to come into your life. Yeah, Naomi and her husband went to Moab. It wasn't God ordained, because God had told them not to, but God used that circumstance to bring Ruth to the place of bread. He brought Ruth. Ruth needed to be in Bethlehem. Ruth needed to be in Bethlehem. Ruth was a part of the genealogy of Jesus Christ. The people that we're not supposed to be mingling with, that were pagan, God said, no, she's got to come. She's in the plan. She's got to be in the plan. She's a part of this situation. And the genealogy of Jesus is going to come through this woman. Come on. Y'all, I'm excited. So let's look at Naomi. But look at this. Although they get home, there's a plan. But yet there's still sadness, because they go home. Her husband's still dead. Her 2 children are still dead. But she's home. So, but that doesn't take the sadness away. It doesn't take the grief away that she's home. But watch this. Where am I? 20. This is what Naomi said. So they came in, they traveled, they got home, and the locals said, can this be Naomi? And so Naomi said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara. She answered, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has opposed me, and the Almighty has afflicted me? So Naomi came back from the territory of Moab with her daughter-in-law, Ruth the Moabite. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. Y'all, sometimes I hear people and they, come a little hard on Naomi for being bitter. But she lost her husband. She lost her 2 boys. She had nothing. But somewhere in Naomi, deep down, she went home. And she knew, I'm bitter right now. Yeah, she was bitter. She didn't see all of God's plan. But there was an inkling for her to go home, because she heard God had heard his people and he was providing. So somewhere there, she knew some provision was going to take place for her. But yet she was bitter. May I share with you that there may be some bitter moments in there. But remember God's promise. Remember that God will he will always fulfill his promise concerning you. He's not going to leave you. He's not going to leave you hopeless, helpless, and he's not going to forsake. So you have to remember that God is for you. You can always come back. God will always provide for you. And yes, acknowledge that feeling. Acknowledge the fact that you're sad. Acknowledge the fact that you're in a place of loss and don't understand why things has happened the way that they have. But you can always go home. And God hears your cry. Just like he heard the children of Israel when they were crying out for help. He heard them and he answered them. So, I want you stay with God and acknowledge him in all the things that you do. The little things and the big things. Acknowledge him. We have to work on that. I do too. Sometimes we just like, oh, I'm just going to go do this, this, and that. But have we acknowledged God? Did we ask him, is this right for you? Is this your will for me? Right? Be someone. Number 2, be someone that others will want to follow. Be that light that other people will see God in you and other people will want to follow you. Not in a negative way, but in a way where they know that there's hope in you. They see hope. Your life displays hope. Okay? And it displays God. Number 3, do not become bitter during hard and difficult times. Hard times are going to come. Difficult times going to come. But the Bible tells us, be of good cheer because I've overcome the world. Yes, but moments come of affliction. Many of the affliction of the righteous, but the Lord deliver us out of them all. When bitterness, we don't want our hearts to get hardened towards God and start blaming God for bad things, because God gives us children good things. But we're in a world that bad things do happen. But God is always close. He is always near. And he loves us. Okay? Y'all, I pray that this lesson has blessed your heart and has encouraged you to keep going. That there's hope in sadness. There's still hope in the hard things. And that you can always go home. Alright? Alright, guys. That's Ruth Chapter 1. I hope that it's encouraged your heart. If it has, hit that like button so that these videos can go out and the gospel will be heard by many. Alright, guys, have a grace-filled week. I will see you next week in Ruth chapter 2. Bye, guys.